The Zorak were sure it would be simple. They thought no one would care about what they did. Far away from any bright star in a cold, hidden station floating in the dark of space, they hurt 10 humans. They didn't give them a chance to speak. They didn't ask for their names. They didn't let anyone know. It was supposed to stay a secret, quiet like the empty space around them. But secrets don't always stay hidden. The galaxy saw what happened, and Earth, far away, was paying attention. The Zorak were a powerful group. They had shiny ships that could zoom across the stars faster than anyone else. Their cities glowed on their home planet, filled with tall towers and machines that hummed all day and night. They thought they were the strongest in the galaxy. They believed humans were weak, like tiny bugs they could squash without anyone noticing. To them, humans were just stories, like fairy tales told to scare kids. They didn't think Earth could do anything to stop them. That was their big mistake. The secret station was a creepy place. It was built in a part of space where no one ever went. The walls were made of hard, gray metal, cold to the touch. The lights inside flickered, making shadows dance on the floor. The Zorak used this station to do things they didn't want others to know about. They thought it was the perfect spot to get rid of the 10 humans. No one would find out, they told themselves. No one would care about a few humans disappearing in a place so far from everything. The 10 humans were regular people. They weren't soldiers or heroes from a movie. They were just folks who had their own lives. Some were parents. Some were friends who loved to laugh and tell jokes. One was a teacher who helped kids learn about stars. Another was a cook who made the best soup anyone ever tasted. They were on a small ship, traveling through space to deliver supplies to a faraway planet. They weren't looking for trouble, but the Zorak found them anyway. The Zorak's ships were sleek and fast, like silver darts shooting through the sky. They caught the human ship easily. The humans didn't have weapons or shields to fight back. The Zorak took them to the secret station without saying a word. The humans asked why they were being taken. They asked what they did wrong. But the Zorak didn't answer. They just locked them in a dark room with no windows. The humans held hands, trying to stay brave, but they were scared. They didn't know what was going to happen. Inside the station, the Zorak leader stood tall. His name was Varkes, and he had shiny green scales covering his body. His eyes were sharp like a hawk watching its prey. Varkes thought he was smarter than everyone else. He told his guards to finish the job quickly. "No one will miss them," he said, his voice cold like ice. "Humans are nothing. This will show everyone we are in charge." The guards nodded and did what he said. They thought it was over. They thought no one would ever know. But the galaxy is a big place, full of eyes and ears. Tiny drones, smaller than a bird, floated through space. They belonged to traders who traveled between stars. These drones saw the Zorak ships take the human ship. They recorded it all, sending the pictures back to their owners. The traders whispered about what they saw. Soon, the news spread to other planets. People started asking questions. Who were those humans? Why did the Zorak take them? What happened in that secret station? On Earth, people were starting to hear the whispers too. Earth wasn't like the Zorak's planet with its glowing towers and fast ships. Earth was green and blue, with oceans that sparkled and forests that swayed in the wind. People there lived in cities and towns, working together to build a better future. They had ships too, but they used them to explore and help others, not to fight. When the news about the 10 humans reached Earth, it was like a stone dropped in a pond. The ripples spread fast. In a small town on Earth, a girl named Leela heard about it. Leela was 10 years old with curly hair and a curious mind. Her dad was one of the humans taken by the Zorak. He was a mechanic who fixed ships so they could fly safely. Leela loved helping him in his workshop, handing him tools while he told her stories about the stars. Now her dad was gone and no one knew why. Leela sat on her porch, looking at the night sky, wondering where he was. She felt sad, but she also felt something else, anger. She wanted to know what happened. Leela wasn't the only one. Across Earth, families and friends of the 10 humans were asking the same questions. A man named Gyro, whose sister was taken, stood in a meeting hall. Gyro was a scientist who studied planets. He was quiet most of the time, but now his voice was loud. "We need to find out what the Zorak did," he said. "We can't let them think they can hurt us and get away with it." The people in the hall cheered. They were tired of being seen as weak. The leaders of Earth heard the people. They met in a big room with maps of the galaxy on the walls. The maps showed stars and planets with lines connecting them like a giant web. The leaders were worried. They knew the Zorak were strong. They knew fighting them would be hard, but they also knew they couldn't do nothing. "We need to send a message," one leader said. "The Zorak can't just take our people and think it's okay." Another leader nodded. "We'll find a way to make them listen." Back in the secret station, the Zorak were cleaning up. They thought their plan worked perfectly. Varkes walked through the halls, his scales glinting under the dim lights. He smiled, thinking about how easy it was. "Humans are no threat," he told his guards. "We can do this again if we need to." The guards laughed, their voices echoing in the empty station. They didn't know that far away on Earth, people were already planning. They didn't know the galaxy was talking about what they did. The news kept spreading. On a planet covered in red sand, a group of miners watched the drone videos. They were friends with humans who visited their planet to trade tools. "This isn't right," one miner said, shaking his head. "The Zorak can't just hurt people like that." On another planet where the sky was purple and the trees glowed, a teacher showed her students the story. "We need to stand up for what's fair," she told them. The students nodded, their eyes wide. Even some Zorak heard the news. Not all Zorak were like Varkes. Some lived far from the shiny cities in small villages where they grew food and built simple homes. A young Zorak named Sela saw the story on a screen in her village. Sela had soft blue scales and a kind heart. She didn't like how Varkes treated others. "This is wrong," she whispered to her friend. "Hurting people isn't how we should be." Her friend agreed, but they were scared to speak too loud. Varkes had spies everywhere. The galaxy was like a giant puzzle, and the pieces were starting to fit together. The Zorak thought they could act in secret, but they were wrong. The drones, the traders, the miners, the teachers, and even some Zorak like Sela were part of something bigger. They were all connected, like stars in a constellation. And Earth was at the center, listening to every word, watching every move. Leela, back on her porch, made a promise to herself. She didn't know how, but she was going to help find her dad. She looked at the stars, feeling like they were watching her back. "We're not weak," she said quietly. "We're going to show them." Her words were small, but they carried a big idea. That idea was growing, not just in Leela, but in Gyro, in the leaders, in everyone on Earth. The Zorak thought they could silence 10 humans and no one would care. They didn't know they had just woken up a planet. The secret station was quiet now, but it wouldn't stay that way. The Zorak thought they had won. They thought the galaxy would forget, but the galaxy doesn't forget. And Earth was ready to act. The Zorak's mistake wasn't just hurting 10 humans. It was thinking humans wouldn't fight back. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The 10 humans taken by the Zorak weren't just random people. Each one had a story, a family, or someone who cared about them deeply. They had lives full of dreams and plans. The Zorak thought they could make them disappear without anyone noticing, but they picked the wrong people. One was the sister of a commander who led ships across the stars. Another was loved by a hacker who could sneak into any computer system. Every single human they hurt was connected to someone strong, someone who wouldn't stay quiet. The first human was named Mara. She was a teacher with bright eyes and a big smile. Mara loved helping kids learn about the galaxy. She taught them how stars were born and how planets spun in space. Her classroom was full of colorful drawings of comets and moons. Mara's brother was Commander Elias, a leader of Earth's space fleet. Elias was brave and smart, guiding ships through dangerous parts of the galaxy to keep people safe. When he heard Mara was taken, his heart felt heavy, like a stone. He promised to find her, no matter what. Another human was Kai, a cook who made food that made everyone happy. Kai's soups were famous on his home station, a busy place where ships stopped to rest. He could take simple ingredients and turn them into something warm and tasty. Kai's best friend was Zara, a hacker with quick fingers and a sharp mind. Zara built secret networks that let people talk without being spied on. She and Kai would sit together, laughing over bowls of his noodle soup. When Zara learned Kai was gone, her hands shook. She opened her computer and started searching for answers. Then there was Leela's dad, Gyro, a mechanic who fixed spaceships. Gyro was kind and patient, always whistling a tune while he worked. His workshop was full of tools and shiny parts, and he could make any ship fly like new. Leela, his 10-year-old daughter, loved helping him. She'd hand him wrenches and listen to his stories about faraway planets. Gyro was on the human ship to fix its engine when the Zorak took it. When Leela heard he was missing, she sat on her porch, staring at the stars. She wasn't just sad, she was determined to help bring him back. Another human was Aisha, a doctor who helped sick people feel better. Aisha worked on a small planet where the air was dusty and dry. She traveled from village to village, carrying a bag full of medicine. Her gentle voice and quick hands made everyone trust her. Aisha's son, Malik, was a builder who designed strong bridges and tall buildings. Malik was proud of his mom's work. When he found out the Zorak took her, he clenched his fists. He started talking to other builders, planning something big to fight back. There was also Sam, a pilot who loved flying through space. Sam's ship was small but fast, darting between stars like a bird. He knew every shortcut in the galaxy and could dodge asteroids with a grin on his face. Sam's sister, Nora, was a scientist who studied new kinds of energy. Nora's lab was filled with glowing machines and buzzing screens. When she heard Sam was taken, she stopped her experiments. She called her scientist friends, ready to use their knowledge to make the Zorak sorry. Another human was Tavi, a gardener who grew plants in space. Tavi's greenhouse was a magical place, full of green leaves and bright flowers floating in zero gravity. She knew how to make food grow even in the coldest parts of space. Tavi's partner, Rico, was a trader who traveled between planets, swapping goods and stories. Rico loved Tavi's quiet strength. When Rico learned Tavi was gone, they stopped trading and started asking questions, talking to every captain they knew. Then there was Chen, a musician who played songs that made people dance. Chen's guitar had scratches from years of playing in crowded spaceports. His music brought strangers together, making them feel like friends. Chen's cousin, Lena, was an engineer who built robots to explore dangerous places. Lena was fierce and clever, always tinkering with gears and wires. When she heard Chen was taken, she started designing something new, a machine to help find him. Another human was Priya, a librarian who kept stories safe. Priya's library was on a space station, packed with books and screens full of tales from every planet. She helped people find answers to their questions, no matter how big or small. Priya's friend Dax was a navigator who mapped the stars. Dax could guide a ship through the darkest parts of space without getting lost. When Dax learned Priya was missing, he studied his maps, looking for the Zorak's secret station. There was also Mateo, a farmer who grew crops on a quiet moon. Mateo's fields were golden under the soft light of his planet's star. He worked hard to feed his community, always sharing what he grew. Mateo's daughter, Sophia, was a writer who told stories about hope and courage. Sophia's words inspired people across the galaxy. When she heard her dad was taken, she picked up her pen. She wrote a story about the 10 humans, sending it to every planet she could reach. The last human was Yara, an artist who painted pictures of the stars. Yara's paintings were so beautiful they made people stop and stare. Her colors swirled like galaxies, telling stories without words. Yara's brother, Finn, was a diplomat who talked to leaders from other planets. Finn was calm and wise, always finding ways to make peace. When he heard Yara was gone, he stopped his meetings. He started calling his allies, asking for help to bring her back. Each of these humans was special, but they were also ordinary. They weren't kings or queens. They didn't have superpowers. They were just people who worked hard and loved their families. But the Zorak didn't see that. They thought humans were weak, like leaves that could be swept away. They didn't know that every human they took had someone who would fight for them. Mara had Elias. Kai had Zara. Gyro had Leela. Aisha had Malik. Sam had Nora. Tavi had Rico. Chen had Lena. Priya had Dax. Mateo had Sophia. Yara had Finn. These people, Elias, Zara, Lila, Malik, Nora, Rico, Lena, Dax, Sophia, and Finn, weren't just sad. They were angry. They were ready to do something. They weren't alone either. Each of them had friends, co-workers, and neighbors who cared about the 10 humans too. On Earth and across the galaxy, people started talking about what happened. The news spread like a spark in dry grass, growing into a fire. Elias stood on the deck of his ship, looking at a picture of Mara. He remembered her teaching him about stars when they were kids. "We'll find you," he whispered. Zara sat at her computer, her fingers flying over the keys. She hacked into Zorak messages, looking for clues about Kai. Leela drew a picture of her dad's workshop, promising to show it to him when he came home. Malik sketched plans for a new machine to help Aisha. Nora tested her energy devices, thinking of Sam's smile. Rico talked to traders, asking about Tavi's ship. Lena built a tiny robot to search for Chen. Dax traced star maps, hunting for Priya. Sophia sent her story to a news station, hoping it would reach Mateo. Finn called a meeting with other diplomats, planning for Yara. The Zorak thought they could hurt 10 humans and no one would care. They thought humans were alone, with no one to stand up for them, but they were wrong. The 10 humans were loved. They were missed. They were part of a bigger family, not just on Earth but across the stars. Every person they took had someone ready to fight back. The Zorak didn't just hurt strangers, they hurt the wrong people. On Earth, the whispers grew louder. People gathered in town squares and meeting halls. They shared stories about the 10 humans. They made signs with their names: Mara, Kai, Gyro, Aisha, Sam, Tavi, Chen, Priya, Mateo, Yara. They promised not to forget. In space, traders and miners passed the news along. Even on the Zorak's planet, some people like Sela, the young Zorak with blue scales, felt ashamed of what their leaders did. The galaxy was starting to wake up. The Zorak thought their secret would stay hidden. They thought no one would notice 10 humans gone, but the galaxy is full of connections, like a web of light between stars. Hurting one person sends ripples to many others. The Zorak didn't see that web. They didn't know how strong it was. They thought they could break a few threads and move on. But those threads were tied to people who wouldn't give up. The Zorak had no idea what was coming. The Zorak thought they had won. They believed no one would care about the 10 humans they took, but they were wrong. Quietly, like a breeze before a storm, humans began to fight back. A Zorak ship vanished in the dark of space. A mining station stopped working. No loud battles happened. No warnings were given. At first, the Zorak laughed, thinking it was nothing. But deep down, they started to feel uneasy. Something had begun, and it wasn't going to stop. The missing Zorak ship was called the Silver Claw. It was a shiny, fast ship that carried supplies between Zorak outposts. One day it was flying through a quiet part of space, far from any planet. The crew was chatting, not worried about anything. Then all at once the ship's lights flickered. The engines went silent. The screens went black. The crew tried to call for help, but no one answered. The Silver Claw was gone, like it had never existed. No one saw what happened. No one heard a sound. On Earth, people whispered about the ship's disappearance. Zara, the hacker who loved Kai, sat at her computer. Her fingers danced over the keys, pulling up secret messages from space. She had found a way to sneak into the Zorak's computers. Zara didn't tell anyone what she did, but she smiled a little when she heard about the Silver Claw. She wasn't loud or showy. She worked in the shadows, making things happen without being seen. This was her way of fighting for her friend. The mining station was next. It was a big, clunky place called Rockspire, built on a rocky asteroid. The Zorak used it to dig up shiny metals for their ships and cities. Hundreds of workers lived there, running machines that hummed and clanked all day. One morning the machines stopped. The lights shut off. The air pumps slowed down. The workers ran around, trying to fix things, but nothing worked. The station was dark and quiet, like a toy with dead batteries. The Zorak sent engineers to check, but they couldn't find the problem. Back on Earth, Lena, the engineer who was Chen's cousin, was busy in her workshop. Her robots were small, like metal bugs, and could crawl into tiny spaces. Lena had sent one of her robots to Rockspire weeks ago, hidden in a crate of supplies. The robot was programmed to wait, then sneak into the station's power system. When the time was right, it flipped a few switches deep inside the machines. No one saw it. No one knew it was there. Lena didn't brag, but she knew her robot had done its job. This was her way of helping Chen. The Zorak didn't connect the dots at first. A missing ship could be an accident. A broken station could be bad luck. They told themselves it was nothing to worry about. Varkis, their leader with green scales, stood in his command room. His sharp eyes looked at reports on a glowing screen. "Fix the station," he growled to his guards. "Find the ship." He didn't think humans had anything to do with it. To him, humans were too weak to cause trouble. He laughed, his voice echoing in the cold room. But his laugh sounded a little forced. On Earth, more people were joining the fight. Elias, Mara's brother, was planning something on his fleet's main ship. His crew trusted him and they were ready to act. Elias didn't want a big war. He wanted to be smart, to hit the Zorak where it hurt without losing lives. He sent a small team to a Zorak supply route. They used a tiny ship, painted black to blend with space. The team messed with a Zorak cargo drone, making it drop its load of food and tools into a nebula, a cloudy part of space where no one would find it. The Zorak didn't see who did it. They just knew their supplies were gone. Layla, Gyro's daughter, was too young to fight, but she wanted to help. She went to her school and told her friends about her dad. Her teacher, Mrs. Carter, listened and had an idea. The class made a video about the 10 humans using simple words and drawings. They sent it to other schools across Earth. Soon, kids everywhere were talking about Mara, Kai, Gyro, and the others. The video spread to space stations and trading posts. People watched it and felt angry. They wanted to do something too. Leela's small idea was growing bigger than she ever imagined. Malik, Aisha's son, was working on his own plan. As a builder, he knew how to make things strong. He also knew how to make them weak. He talked to his friends who worked on space docks where ships were fixed. They found a Zorak ship that had stopped for repairs. Late at night, they slipped into the dock and tampered with the ship's engine. It wasn't broken enough to be noticed right away, but it would fail the next time it flew. Malik didn't tell anyone outside his group. He just nodded to his friends and went back to work, thinking of his mom. Nora, Sam's sister, was using her science skills. Her lab was full of machines that buzzed and glowed. She had invented a device that could mess with Zorak communication signals. Nora tested it on a small Zorak outpost, sending a burst of static that scrambled their radios for hours. The Zorak guards shouted, trying to figure out what was wrong. They thought it was a glitch. Nora knew better. She adjusted her device, planning to use it again. This was her way of fighting for her brother. Rico, Tavi's partner, was out in space talking to traders. Traders knew every corner of the galaxy and heard every rumor. Rico asked them to spread a story. The Zorak weren't as strong as they seemed. They lost a ship. Their station broke. People started whispering, wondering if the Zorak were slipping. Rico also paid a trader to lose a shipment of Zorak fuel cells. The cells ended up in a junkyard, useless to anyone. Rico smiled, thinking of Tavi's greenhouse, and kept moving. Dax, Priya's friend, was a navigator who knew the stars like a map. He found a Zorak patrol route, a path their ships took to check their territory. Dax shared the route with a group of human pilots. They flew close to the route and dropped small devices that looked like space rocks. These devices sent out fake signals, making Zorak ships think enemies were nearby. The Zorak chased shadows, wasting time and fuel. Dax watched from his ship, his eyes sharp. He was doing this for Priya. Sophia, Mateo's daughter, kept writing. Her stories about the 10 humans reached more people every day. One story was about a farmer like her dad, standing up to a bully. People read it on their screens and felt brave. Sophia's words were like seeds, growing ideas in people's minds. Some started small acts of their own, hiding Zorak supplies, delaying Zorak ships, or spreading more stories. Sophia didn't know all the ways her words helped, but she kept writing, thinking of her dad's fields. Finn, Yara's brother, was talking to other planets. As a diplomat, he knew how to make friends. He told leaders about the 10 humans and asked for their support. Some planets sent messages to the Zorak, saying they didn't like what happened. Others quietly stopped trading with the Zorak, making it harder for them to get supplies. Finn's calm voice carried weight. He was building a wall of allies around the Zorak, all for his sister. These small acts were happening all over. A Zorak outpost lost power for a day. A Zorak computer showed wrong numbers, messing up their plans. A Zorak ship got a virus that made its maps useless. None of these things were loud or big. No battleships roared. No lasers flashed. But they added up like drops of water wearing down a rock. The Zorak started to notice. Their leaders sent more guards to check their stations. They doubled their patrols. They still didn't think humans were behind it,